Most people think a recession starts when the news says so, when anchors look serious and graphics turn red, when economists officially declare 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decline, when the word finally appears in headlines and everyone acts surprised. Wrong. A recession starts in the cracks, the quiet places where homeowners stop paying, where listings pile up without buyers, where foreclosures rise month after month before the headlines catch up. The official announcement is the funeral. The death happens long before anyone writes the obituary. And here is the part that should make you sit up. Foreclosure filings surged again in late 2025. December jumped hard versus both the prior month and the prior year. But more importantly, and this is what most coverage misses, that surge is not evenly spread across the map. It is clustering, hard, in specific states. That clustering matters because it reveals where the foundations are weakest, where household finances are already stretched, where one more shock, one more rate hike, one more layoff wave, one more insurance premium increase could push communities from stressed to breaking. So in this video, I am going to walk you through 15 states that are most likely to feel the pain first if 2026 gets ugly. Not because I feel like it, not because I want to generate fear for clicks, not because pessimism plays well on YouTube, because the housing stress is already showing up in the numbers. Foreclosure rates, foreclosure spikes, inventory buildups, and the kind of market behavior that usually happens right before things break. These are not predictions pulled from thin air. They are patterns emerging from data that most people are not watching closely enough. And fair warning, if you live in one of these states, this is not meant to scare you. It is meant to stop you from getting blindsided. Because the people who get hurt worst in downturns are not the ones who saw it coming and prepared. They are the ones who assumed everything was fine until it was not. Let us make sure you are not in that second group. The 3 triggers that signal trouble. Before we get into the state-by-state breakdown, you need to understand the 3 triggers that signal housing markets are approaching danger zones. These triggers work together, and when all 3 appear simultaneously in the same geography, that is when you should pay serious attention. Trigger number 1. Foreclosures rising even before a recession. This is the most important signal, and it is the one most people miss. Foreclosures are supposed to rise during recessions. That is expected. People lose jobs, cannot make payments, and lose homes. The causation is clear. But when foreclosures rise before a recession, when the economy is still technically growing, when unemployment is still relatively low, when nothing has officially gone wrong yet, that tells you something different. It tells you household finances are already maxed out. It tells you people are struggling even under supposedly good conditions. It tells you there is no cushion left for when conditions actually deteriorate. Late 2025 foreclosure reports show exactly this pattern. Foreclosure activity rose year over year for months, and December jumped significantly compared to both the prior month and the prior year. That is not supposed to happen in a strong economy, but it is happening, which means the economy is not as strong as the headlines suggest, at least not for everyone. Trigger number 2, inventory recovering, meaning sellers are starting to compete again. For years, low inventory protected home prices. There simply were not enough homes for sale to create meaningful price competition. Sellers could price high and wait. Buyers had to accept what was available. That dynamic is shifting. Recent data shows inventory rising year over year in many markets. More homes are hitting the market. More sellers are competing for the same pool of buyers. But here's the critical insight. This shift is not happening uniformly. The market is becoming exceptions, not averages. Some places hold value because local demand remains strong. Others crack because the demand that once existed has evaporated. When inventory rises while demand weakens, price cuts follow. It is not complicated math. It is basic supply and demand. The question is which markets experience this dynamic first and most severely. Trigger number 3. In certain states, the stress is concentrated, not random. If foreclosure spikes were randomly distributed across the country, that would suggest temporary, localized problems. A factory closing here, a natural disaster there, isolated events without systemic implications. But when foreclosure rates stack up repeatedly in the same states, when the same geographies appear at the top of stress rankings month after month, that is not noise. That is pressure building in the same weak points. It means something structural is wrong in those markets. Something about income levels, housing costs, employment stability, or demographic patterns creates persistent vulnerability that will not disappear when headlines improve. These concentrated pressure points are where recessions hit first and hardest. They are the canaries in the coal mine, and they are already singing. Now let's get into the list. The 15 states most likely to crack first. I'm counting down from 15 to 1, saving the most vulnerable state for last. Each state appears on this list for specific reasons grounded in recent foreclosure data and market dynamics. 15. Iowa. You wouldn't expect Iowa to appear on a housing vulnerability list. Stable agricultural economy, conservative financial culture, no coastal speculation, no boom-bust history. Iowa is supposed to be the kind of place where housing markets just quietly function without drama, which is exactly why its appearance here is dangerous. In December 2025, Iowa posted a foreclosure rate of 1 in every 3,109 housing units. That's not catastrophic by itself, but it's elevated enough to raise questions about what's happening beneath the surface. When states like Iowa start popping up on foreclosure watch lists, it usually means the pressure isn't isolated to obvious problem areas anymore. It's spreading into places that are supposed to be safe. Iowa isn't going to lead a housing collapse, but its presence on this list signals that stress is becoming more widespread than comfortable narratives suggest. Louisiana is a classic first-hit state in economic downturns. The reasons are structural. Incomes run lower than national averages. Economic diversity is limited. Recovery from past shocks, including hurricanes, oil price swings, and industrial shifts, happens slower here than in more resilient states. In December 2025, Louisiana posted a foreclosure rate of 1 in every 2,966 housing units, already elevated before any official recession begins. The problem in states like Louisiana is that they do not have much cushion. Household finances are already stretched under normal conditions. When job markets soften, when hours get cut, when layoffs begin, when the informal economy contracts, that baseline stress does not just continue, it accelerates. Louisiana will not surprise anyone by struggling in a downturn, but the severity of that struggle often exceeds what people expect, precisely because the baseline is already so fragile. 13th, Colorado. Colorado shocked a lot of people in 2025. The state built a reputation as a desirable destination for outdoor lifestyle, a growing tech presence, and an educated workforce. Colorado was supposed to be recession-resistant because people wanted to live there regardless of economic conditions. That story hit reality hard. In October 2025, Colorado showed a 145% year-over-year spike in foreclosure filings. That is not normal. Cooling after pandemic-era heat, it is not a gradual adjustment to higher interest rates. This is a snap. What happened? Prices ran far ahead of local incomes during the boom years. When interest rates rose and affordability collapsed, the buyers who had been stretching to afford Colorado homes suddenly could not stretch anymore. Colorado's problem is not a lack of desirability. That desirability drove prices to levels that only worked when money was cheap. Expensive money reveals how fragile those valuations actually were. Arizona sits in that danger pocket where affordability ran ahead of wages, and now reality is catching up. The state attracted enormous migration during the pandemic years, people fleeing California costs, remote workers seeking sunshine and space, and retirees chasing warmth and favorable tax treatment. All that demand drove prices up, and up, and up. In October 2025, Arizona posted a foreclosure rate of 1 in every 4,352 housing units, with filings continuing their upward trajectory. Here is what people miss about affordability migration states. The people who moved there often stretched their budgets to make it work. They calculated that even expensive Arizona was cheaper than where they came from. But stretched budgets do not tolerate shocks well. When insurance rates spike, when property taxes are reassessed, when job situations change, those stretched budgets break. Affordability states do not lose momentum gently. They drop in steps, each step steeper than the one before. Number 11 is North Carolina. North Carolina is another quiet state that people assume is safe. The Research Triangle, financial services in Charlotte, steady population growth, and a diverse economy all suggest resilience. But in October 2025, North Carolina showed foreclosure filings at 1 in every 4,242 housing units, elevated enough to warrant attention. When a growth state starts showing stress signals, it usually means household budgets are already maxed out. The growth that attracted people also raised prices. Many of the people who arrived stretched to afford entry. Now there is no room for error. North Carolina's fundamentals remain strong, but strong fundamentals do not guarantee individual households can handle the mortgages they took on. When those households struggle, foreclosure rates rise regardless of state-level economic statistics. Oklahoma doesn't get much national attention, which is probably fine with Oklahomans, but the same data that reveals stress elsewhere shows stress here too. In October 2025, Oklahoma posted foreclosure filings at 1 in every 3,816 housing units. Not the worst on paper, but context matters. Oklahoma is the kind of state where a small economic shock becomes a big household problem fast. Incomes are moderate. Savings rates are limited. Economic diversity exists, but it is not deep. The danger is not that Oklahoma collapses dramatically. It is that Oklahoma households do not have the margin to absorb hits that wealthier households elsewhere could manage. Small problems become big problems faster here than in states with thicker financial cushions. Idaho is what happens when a boom meets higher interest rates. Few states experienced more dramatic pandemic-era appreciation than Idaho. Boise became a symbol of remote work migration. Prices doubled in some areas. Idaho went from an affordable secret to a national phenomenon. In October 2025, Idaho hit foreclosure filings at 1 in every 3,770 housing units, with activity surging compared to the year before. Boom states do not like slowdowns, and they overreact. The people who bought at peak prices with pandemic-era rates are now sitting on mortgages that do not make sense at current valuations. The people who stretched to afford Idaho homes are discovering that stretched budgets do not tolerate the unexpected. Idaho's boom was real. Booms built on migration and cheap money look different when migration slows and money gets expensive. New York's problem is that it is heavy, expensive, and slow to pivot. The state carries enormous fixed costs, including infrastructure maintenance, pension obligations, and social services. Those costs do not decline when tax revenue falls. The math gets uncomfortable fast when economic conditions deteriorate. In October 2025, New York posted foreclosure filings at 1 in every 4,765 housing units, and that is with a market that still has areas performing well. The danger with expensive states is not that they get slightly worse in recessions. The real risk is that they are forced into uncomfortable decisions that create cascading effects. Property taxes may rise to cover budget gaps. Services may get cut, reducing quality of life. Households that were managing at the edge can suddenly find themselves over it. New York will not collapse, but it will get squeezed, and squeezed states produce foreclosures from pressure that does not show up in simple economic statistics. Mid-video reminder: if this analysis is helping you understand what is actually happening in housing markets, not just what headlines want you to believe, hit subscribe. This channel exists to explain the mechanics behind economic shifts, not to repeat comfortable narratives that leave people unprepared. More states ahead, including number 1, which probably will not surprise you. But the reasons why might. Let's continue. 7. Ohio. Ohio is one of those states that always shows up when housing stress rises nationally. It is not a coincidence. Ohio's economic structure, with a manufacturing legacy, moderate incomes, and older housing stock, creates persistent vulnerability that surfaces whenever pressure increases. Year-end 2025 reports place Ohio among the states with higher foreclosure rates nationally. When Ohio gets noisy on these metrics, it usually means the middle of the country is starting to feel whatever strain the coasts felt first. Ohio is not glamorous. It does not generate the dramatic stories that Florida or California produce. But Ohio's consistency on stress indicators makes it a reliable signal. When Ohio struggles, the Midwest struggles. And when the Midwest struggles, that is a lot of American households feeling pain simultaneously. Indiana is another consistent early warning state, the kind that shows up on foreclosure lists before most people notice trouble brewing. Year-end 2025 data places Indiana among the higher foreclosure rate states nationally. This follows a pattern visible across multiple reporting periods. What makes Midwest clustering significant is that when multiple states in the same region show stress at the same time, it is rarely just local. It is usually something systemic affecting the regional economy, such as manufacturing slowdowns, agricultural price shifts, or broader patterns that do not respect state borders. Indiana's stress connects to Ohio's and to broader Midwest dynamics. These states move together because their economies are linked. When they show strain together, something bigger is happening. Maryland sits in a high-cost corridor where household finances can get squeezed fast. The state's economy depends heavily on federal employment and contractors, stable during normal times, but not immune to political shifts and budget pressures. Housing costs in the Baltimore and Washington corridor run high. Commute costs compound the burden. Year-end 2025 reporting shows Maryland among the higher foreclosure rate states nationally. The danger in commuter-heavy states is that housing stress ripples outward. When households in suburban Maryland struggle, they cut spending that supports local businesses. Those businesses reduce hours or lay off workers. Those workers face their own financial stress. Maryland's foreclosure numbers are not just statistics about housing. They are early indicators of broader economic strain in a region that is supposed to be stable. 4. Connecticut. Connecticut is another state that consistently shows up when financial strain increases nationally. Year-end 2025 data places Connecticut among the higher foreclosure rate states, a position the state has occupied repeatedly over the past year. Connecticut exemplifies the high cost plus slow growth vulnerability profile. Housing is expensive. Taxes are high. But economic growth has not matched those costs. The gap between what life costs in Connecticut and what Connecticut's economy generates creates persistent household pressure. This is where high cost plus slow growth becomes fragile. There is no margin for error. Households operating at the edge stay at the edge, and edges crumble when conditions deteriorate. Illinois is the kind of state that doesn't need a recession to struggle, because it already runs hot with structural pressure even during good times. Pension obligations consume budget flexibility. Taxes drive out residents and businesses. Population has declined for years. The math doesn't work, and everyone knows it doesn't work, but the problems persist because fixing them is politically impossible. Data from the end of 2025 places Illinois among the states with higher foreclosure rates nationally. When a recession hits a state with less room to maneuver, the damage sticks around longer. Illinois can't cut its way to stability because obligations are fixed. It can't grow its way out because growth has been negative. It just absorbs damage and struggles to recover. Illinois is fragile. A recession doesn't create that fragility. It reveals and accelerates it. Delaware. Delaware is small, and when small states get hit, they get hit hard. Year-end 2025, reporting flags Delaware among the top states for foreclosure rates nationally. That elevated position reflects the vulnerability that comes with limited size. Small states have thin buffers. A few thousand foreclosures that larger states would absorb as statistical noise can represent significant portions of Delaware's housing market. There is less economic diversity to cushion blows. There are fewer alternative employment options when major employers struggle. Small state, thin buffer. That is how you get fast breakdowns, situations that escalate quickly precisely because there is so little mass to absorb impact. Delaware is not going to generate national headlines, but Delaware households experiencing foreclosure do not care about national headlines. They care about losing their homes. Florida is the main event, October 2025. Data put Florida at one foreclosure filing for every 1,829 housing units, the highest rate in that report. And broader late 2025 reporting shows foreclosure activity continuing to rise nationally into year-end, with Florida repeatedly leading the stress rankings. Florida doesn't just have one problem, it stacks them. Insurance crisis. Premiums doubled or tripled in many areas. Some insurers left the state entirely. Households that could afford their mortgages cannot afford their insurance, and mortgages require insurance. Affordability collapse. Prices rose dramatically during pandemic migration. Wages did not keep pace. The gap between housing costs and local incomes stretched beyond sustainability. Climate exposure. Flooding, hurricanes, and rising sea levels are not future concerns. They are current realities affecting current property values and current insurance availability. Homeowners association dysfunction. Aging condo buildings require expensive repairs. Associations that deferred maintenance face massive special assessments. Owners who cannot afford assessments can lose their units regardless of mortgage status. Stacked problems are what collapse markets. Any one of Florida's issues would be manageable. All of them together create conditions where foreclosure becomes the only option for households that cannot escape the compounding pressure. Florida is not going to collapse overnight, but Florida is going to produce foreclosure numbers that shock people who have not been paying attention. And those numbers are already building. What you should watch if you live in these states. If you live in any of these 15 states, do not panic, but do not ignore the signals either. Watch these 3 things monthly. Foreclosure filings in your county. National statistics average away local reality. What matters is what is happening where you actually live. Your county recorder's office tracks foreclosure filings. Your local news covers auction notices. That data affects your neighborhood, your property values, your community stability. Inventory trend: if listings rise while demand weakens, price cuts follow. Track how many homes are for sale in your area compared to last month, last quarter, last year. Track how that inventory compares to buyer activity. If inventory rises while sales slow, sellers will compete on price. That competition drives values down. Time on market. If homes sit longer, the market is losing urgency. When homes sell fast, buyers feel pressure to act. That pressure supports prices. When homes sit for weeks or months, that pressure disappears. Sellers get nervous. Price cuts follow. Because once urgency dies, price drops begin. And price drops in stressed markets do not stop at reasonable levels, they overshoot, because stressed sellers accept whatever offers arrive. So out of these 15 states, which one looks the most unstable where you live? Drop your state in the comments and tell me what you are seeing on the ground. More listings appearing without buyers, more price cuts on homes that would have sold instantly 2 years ago, more for sale signs sitting for weeks without activity. Your observations matter because you see what statistics cannot capture. You see the neighborhood dynamics. You see which houses are going into distress. You see whether the people around you are managing or struggling. That ground-level intelligence is more valuable than any report, and sharing it helps everyone watching understand what is actually happening, not just what headlines claim. And if you want the follow-up video, I will do the 15 states that will survive recession 2026 the best, because not every state is vulnerable. Some have structural advantages that will matter when conditions deteriorate. Some will actually benefit from migration out of struggling areas. But I'll only make that video if this one performs. So hit like and subscribe if you want to see the other side of this analysis. Because the next wave of this story is already building. The question is whether you will see it coming, or whether you will be blindsided like everyone who ignored the warnings last time. Thanks for watching. Stay informed. I will see you in the next one.